Hello and welcome into today's edition of the PHNX D-Back Show. My name is Jesse Friedman. Back-to-back days of star-studded guests here on the podcast. Kevin Ginkel in studio yesterday. Today we were joined by the one and only Patrick Lyons. Patrick, how are you today?
Yeah, appreciate you. It's look, Kevin Ginkel. He's a setup man in both the Diamondbacks bullpen as well as on the PHNX Diamondbacks show, setting up for a great closeout to the week. I will make sure I lock it down for the final three segments of the week, and we'll get a win. We'll get a win out of this.
There you go. You're expected to be the Paul Sewald, if you will, of the podcast. Welcome once again into the PHNX Diamondbacks show. We'd like to give a special shout out to OG's Brands, the official sponsor of Flavoring Fridays. Of course, happy Flavoring Friday to everyone here in the chat. OG's is not your average cannabis-infused gummy. They absolutely knock it out of the park when it comes to flavor, and the effects of their gummies are a total slam dunk as well. Head on over to ogsbrands.com to see their full lineup and find out where you can purchase. Well, Patrick, welcome once again back to the podcast. This was basically the Patrick Lyons show for a solid month there during the Diamondbacks postseason run. So good to have you back, sir. But today our primary topic is this guy who plays for the Tampa Bay Rays, who is being somewhat loosely linked to the Arizona Diamondbacks. I wouldn't say that there's a whole lot of weight to these reports yet. Jeff Passan in his story today talked about the Rays being open potentially to trading Randy Arozarena. It seems like Tyler Glasnow is pretty much going to get moved. I don't know if we really feel that way about Arozarena at this point, but Gambo over at Arizona Sports has talked about the Diamondbacks being interested. It certainly does make some sense given what the Diamondbacks' needs are. First of all, Patrick, just like as an outsider, just like a baseball fan in general, what is Randy Arozarena? Like, this guy he's not just a good player, like he has a brand that sort of goes with him as well.
He really does. He's been a player that's been exciting for the last couple years, and as you see him every year in the postseason, obviously with the Tampa Bay Rays. So he's got that postseason credibility. We got to see it in the World Baseball Classic as well with Team Mexico, and he's got a swagger about him, and he seems like he's been around for quite some time. And yet, one of the reasons why I think he becomes such an interesting trade chip for the Rays to trade right now at this point, and for any team acquiring him, is because he's got 3 more years left of club control. So
right.
You look at that and you say, hey, this is definitely not any rental by any means. And because of his age, of where he's at right now at 28, he'll be 29 for much of next season. You might even be able to come together on some kind of extension and lock him up for that 4th or 5th year, potentially get you some cost assurance a little bit on the books. And for a team like the Diamondbacks, that might be a good fit, considering that their window of contention is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned his postseason performance. That's a very real thing. Randy Arozarena, his career OPS in the playoffs is 1104. Pretty decent. And his regular season numbers in 2023 were pretty decent as well. If we take a look at those, Arozarena hit 254 with a 364 on base percentage. Drew a lot of walks this year, 80 walks at a career high in terms of walk rate, a 425 slugging percentage, 23 homers, 83 RBI. He was worth 3.3 wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs, 3.5 over on Baseball Reference. Randy Arozarena is a really good player. Is he a superstar? Is he, like a Corbin Carroll level outfielder? Probably not. I don't think the numbers support that, but he's a good player. And as you mentioned, him being 28 years old, the fact that he has 3 years of club control remaining, it certainly makes some sense as a guy that the Diamondbacks could target. And this is sort of, I mean, it's not totally shocking that the Tampa Bay Rays would be interested in moving him, or at least willing to talk about moving him. He was a Super 2 guy, so he's got 4 years of arbitration instead of 3. He's projected to make $9 million this next season. That's just going to escalate over the next couple years. He might get close to $20 million in his final year of arbitration, being a Super 2 guy and putting up these kind of numbers. He's not necessarily super cheap, but I mean, you look at those numbers, Patrick, and you see just a well-rounded, pretty solid player that would certainly fit in well in this Diamondbacks lineup.
Yeah, I agree with what you said about him not exactly being a superstar caliber player, probably that tier, just below that. You say, well, 20 homers, 20 RBI, but 20 stolen bases. But you look at his career high in general, you say 23 home runs. Okay, that's not necessarily superstar caliber. And you say, well, he does have the 20 plus stolen bases each and every year, but a lot of caught stealing. That's the other element to that is if you look, if you're not able to steal bases at a 75% clip or better, and I don't know how much of that's actually going to change considering with the new rules that are in place, but that's typically been the rule. The number of 75% is like that's the thought is you need to be at least there or above. Then you say, how good is he actually? And then you throw in this defense too, which is obviously such a huge component. Particularly in the NL West, I think probably one of the hardest divisions to play in. We know how big that outfield is in Arizona. Same can be true of Colorado. We know the different textures that are out there at Oracle Park in San Francisco can definitely be a challenge. So I think the fact that he is slightly below average to maybe average at best defensively, does give you some pause, and coupled with the fact that you said he's going to become very expensive, you say, well, wait a minute, let's really give this some consideration, because if he's not going to come cheap and you're going to have to pay for him here in the next couple of years going forward, and the defense might be below average, is that actually a good fit? Could there be better moves for the Diamondbacks this offseason or even next?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the stolen base point as well. He does, yeah, I think he's stolen over 20 bases the last 3 seasons, but not particularly efficient in that regard. He was 22 for 32 in stolen base attempts in 2023. That's a success rate just under 70%. League average this year under the new rules was just over 80%. The Diamondbacks as a team were at 86.5%. They were extremely efficient on the base paths. So and this is, as you pointed out, kind of a trend for Arozarena. He has a success rate just under 70% over the last 3 seasons altogether. So that's something the Diamondbacks seem to be pretty careful with. They definitely are not the kind of team that just wants you to run if you're going to get thrown out too often. So of course, the Diamondbacks do have Dave McKay, who is widely regarded as one of the best base running coaches in the sport. And it doesn't seem all that far-fetched that Arozarena could come over, learn some things from him, and maybe become a little more efficient. And maybe there's a case to be made there as well defensively. The Diamondbacks have, I think a well-regarded coaching staff when it comes to teaching defense, in particular in the outfield. We saw Lourdes Gurriel Jr. Have a pretty solid year defensively, arguably should have been a Gold Glove finalist in left field. And yeah, I mean, he wasn't necessarily viewed that way coming into Arizona. I think he improved meaningfully once he got here. So it does seem like, even though those are clear weaknesses at this point, or at least defense, as you said, maybe it's close to average, but it's not great. Those are things that the Diamondbacks on paper could be well equipped to try to help him out and try to help him improve in those regards.
I could see that happening too, because Arozarena is kind of a late bloomer. I mean, look, he's a guy that the Cardinals pretty much cast off and didn't really see much value in him by trading him to Tampa Bay, not getting back very much for him. Coupled with the 2020 pandemic season, he didn't really have his first full year in the bigs until his age 26 season. So
yeah,
I think for a guy like him, change of scenery, not because the scenery is so bad in Tampa, but just getting with a new coaching staff, working with a guy who's, regarded as one of the best, coaches around in Dave McKay, that could definitely take him to that next level. So I very much could see that still in that prime window, right? Age 29 through 31 is when you'd have him under club control. So I very much could see him being able to get that unlocked with a team like Arizona, with that support group, and alongside a guy who would more than likely be his center fielder that he knows a thing or two about playing alongside.
Yes, he absolutely does. And we, in fact, have a picture of Randy Arozarena and Alec Thomas from their days back in the World Baseball Classic. It seemed like they got along well. Seemed like they enjoyed patrolling the outfield for Team Mexico together, so that there is a connection there. As far as what it would take to get this deal done, which is really the $1 million question here. The Tampa Bay Rays, as I said, are in an interesting position where I think they're probably going to trade Tyler Glass now. And I think they're open to trading a lot of different guys, in large part because their payroll is like actually kind of high going into 2024, at least by their standards. Their estimated year-end payroll is 125 million, right around there, according to COTS, which is not a kind of payroll that we normally see the Tampa Bay Rays run. So, it sounds like there might be some ability to move the payroll up a little bit, but I'm not sure they're comfortable keeping it that high. They've never had a year-end payroll of even 100 million. So 125 is sort of way higher than where they've been in years past. But as far as what they'd be looking for, Wander Franco, interesting situation right now. Shortstop for the Rays seems like something that they could be interested in. Starting pitching, they have a number of different injuries there right now. Their starting rotation is not full at all going into the 2024 season. Shane McClanahan, a couple of other guys dealing with pretty significant arm injuries that will keep them out for part of the 2024 season. So starting pitching is certainly a need that they have. If they are trading Arozarena, they might also trade Manuel Margot. I imagine they'd be looking for some outfield depth. And I guess, just general prospects that, they might be interested in taking that on as well. So those are kind of what I think the Rays might be looking for. Geraldo Perdomo, Patrick, is a name that comes to mind. I don't think Diamondbacks would like dealing Geraldo Perdomo, and I can certainly understand why. But someone who could sort of make sense for the Rays on their side of things, and someone who, from a value standpoint, roughly similar to Arozarena. There's more control there. It's more affordable. I don't think Perdomo is quite the player that Arozarena is. So I think one possibility here is to try to build a deal around him.
When I sat down to concoct a trade for Randy Arozarena, my eyes did settle on Geraldo Perdomo as being that top trade piece for the Diamondbacks, obviously with Jordan Lawler coming up through the system being there, and just the club, the amount of club control still remaining on for Perdomo is obviously something that's going to be a positive for the Rays. As you point out, with the payroll being so high for Tampa, again, they trade Tyler Glass. Now that's $25 million off the books right there. So that does definitely bring the number down.
Yes.
But there's not fat. Like, that's the other piece too for smaller market teams like the Diamondbacks. They really need to look at other teams' rosters and say, hey, who do you want to get rid of that you're just looking to save some money? Because we might be able to utilize that guy and, we'll take him off your hands if you want to pay down his contract. Rays, unfortunately, don't really have that. That being said, you have a guy potentially making about $4.4 million in arbitration this year in Harold Ramirez. And you say, okay, maybe that's your fourth outfielder. There could be those guys that the Rays say, hey, can you take him off our hands? And we're really not going to charge you full price for him. So there really could be a multiplayer deal lurking if you do engage in those conversations with the Rays. But you're right. I think it does have to start with a Geraldo Perdomo. And it becomes similar to that, Zach Gallen for Jazz Chisholm deal. Obviously, those players weren't as established, but it was very much, hey, your guy for my guy. Let's see who wins. And maybe it can just be a win-win, similar to what the Diamondbacks did around this time last year in the Gabriel Moreno, Lourdes Gurriel for Dalton Varsho trade. And so the Diamondbacks are willing to deal big league talent. The Rays, we know, do that just about every single offseason at the trade deadline when they need to. So I think Perdomo or Arozarena starts a conversation off in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not Geraldo Perdomo, then, you kind of try to think about, who else could be the centerpiece of a deal like this. I don't think the Diamondbacks are going to trade Brandon Pfaadt. I feel like that's just pretty much completely out of the realm of possibility. Don't even really have to talk about that. But I guess you look at the farm system, you look at a guy like Drew Jones, you look at Tommy Troy, the Diamondbacks' first-round pick from this last year. I don't think there's any chance the Diamondbacks would trade Jordan Lawler. in this deal. I just don't see that happening, so I'm not going to go there. But yeah, it's hard to know, how do the Rays feel about Tommy Troy? How do the Rays feel about Drew Jones, a guy who's, certainly a big name and still has a very high ceiling, but didn't look all that great in his first pass through pro ball this past season. So yeah, I mean, would the Rays be interested in something like that? I'm not totally sure at this point.
I mean, maybe you can even float a guy like Jake McCarthy out there, where again, if
Yeah,
you're acquiring a Arozarena, he's going to be in left, Thomas in center, Corbin Carroll in right. Boom, you're pretty much locked up right there going forward. So McCarthy again becomes expendable, and if you go ahead and eat a Harold Ramirez's contract, who again nice number 4 outfielder, but you don't need McCarthy quite as much, and that could quite possibly sweeten a deal. I'm kind of curious, and I'm sure we'll touch on this a little bit later on in the show, but I'm wondering how much if Arozarena is, truly on the market, and we know the Rays are at least listening, as all teams should, on pretty much
yeah.
every player. But how much does the Juan Soto trade market impact Arozarena, where those teams that may miss out on a Juan Soto now start calling down to Tampa and saying, hey, we're ready to engage with you right now. So it may be a long game here. It could be a long process, and to waiting to see what happens with Juan Soto's market, really almost waiting to see what happens with Shohei Ohtani, because then once he goes, now some of the bigger pieces can fall. Cody Bellinger is going to go to the runner-ups in the Ohtani sweepstakes and whatnot. So any trade for a Arozarena, I very much could see something that takes a couple weeks to come to fruition once some of the other dominoes fall first.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, for the D-backs, they're also very much in the market for a starting pitcher. I mean, I think that's really the number one priority at this point. So you wouldn't want a Randy Arozarena trade to make it so that you no longer have the resources needed to go and satisfy really an even bigger need at starting pitcher. And as far as that's concerned, I'm not sure exactly what that would look like. I mean, Arozarena is set to make $9 million roughly in arbitration next season. We've heard from Nick Picoro earlier this week over the Arizona Republic that the D-backs have maybe around $20 million left to spend this winter. If that's the case, then I mean, you're basically spending half of your money that you have this winter on Arozarena plus the trade assets required to get him, which I don't think would be a minor cost. So the cost here is pretty high for the D-backs. It's not just that you're trading away, prospects or potentially a young player like Geraldo Perdomo. So you're also like allocating not a big portion of your payroll, but like a big enough portion of your payroll to maybe affect some of the other things that you're looking for.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit careful, but at the same time, you don't want to be looking back and say, man, they went to the World Series in 2023. There was an opportunity to do something in 2024, and it kind of never came to fruition. And you go back and look and say, man, there was like this lost generation. So despite the fact that the window is open, there could be a thing as being too cautious. So if the deal is right, you have to kind of make a move like this, with the budget being as such where you can really only add $20 million. It would be curious to see if again, you never know. The Rays are peculiar and particular in the sense
They
that if
are.
they like a guy, they'll go ahead and fleece a team and win a trade in a major way. And so if there's somebody that's on the Diamondbacks roster, if let's say Geraldo Perdomo is that guy for them, and they're saying, man, we really value this guy in a major way, especially because we've got a bit of a gap right now at shortstop with the whole Wander Franco situation kind of up in the air and really not up in the air. It seems like this guy's done forever. But if they're really valuing him, it would be interesting to see how much more they would need to possibly include someone like Tyler Glasnow. Now, Glasnow, you
Yeah.
think is probably going to get
There you
more.
go.
You think Glasnow's probably going to get more than Arozarena, but Arozarena, again, he's got 3 more years of control, whereas Glasnow doesn't. He's going to end up going to free agency. So it's an interesting dichotomy here to where you'd be adding closer to $35 million, which is way over your $20 million budget. But if the cost is right, the Diamondbacks might be able to make it work and say, hey, let's kind of go after it a little bit earlier here in 2024. I really thought that maybe 2025 would be when you start to see them, making a little bit, more of those aggressive moves and
Yeah.
bigger free agent decisions. But keep in mind, and I know you guys talk about this plenty, all these young dudes, Fott, I mean, Perdomo as well, Alec Thomas, Gabby Moreno, they're going to get a lot more expensive going forward. So right now is actually that time where you can load up that roster and say, look at all the players that we have at the exact same time right here impacting the roster, 162 games over the course of the season at Chase Field. You can really only do that right now because in 2-3 years, once all those young guys go into the arbitration process, now
Yeah.
all of a sudden you need the next group of young guys to make an impact in order for the books to get balanced. So it's still very unlikely that they would be as aggressive as that. But look, is there potential for that? I think maybe there's a world out there that exists where the Diamondbacks can acquire both Tyler Glasnow and Randy Arozarena.
You heard it here first, folks. Patrick Lyons reporting that the Arizona Diamondbacks are trading for both Tyler Glasnow and Randy Arozarena. Yeah. No, I mean, I think what you're saying, though, about this need to go for it right now, I think it's a very good point. I very much feel the same way about this baseball team. Not only is it that those guys are going to get more expensive, but is Zach Gallen still here in 3 years? Is Merrill Kelly still here in 3 years? Christian Walker is a free agent after the 2024 season. You really are in a window right now coming off of that World Series run to try to push in the chips and get back there, right? Try to go as far as you can right now. I know some people have been a little disappointed with, the $20 million figure, which of course is not gospel. We don't know for sure. We have seen Ken Kendrick maybe stretch things a little bit if the situation was right. We saw the D-backs give over $200 million to Zach Greinke. There have been, little things like that here and there over the years. But yeah, I mean, the Diamondbacks are in position right now, I agree, to be as aggressive as they reasonably can at this point, and going out and getting a Randy Arozarena would be that move, or at least one of the ways that they could do that. And Randy Arozarena, I mean, I kind of touched on this earlier. It's not just the player. It's the vibes, right? I mean, Randy Arozarena just comes with, he's just a fun personality that I think like he is just universally loved, I think, by pretty much everyone across baseball. Is just, a big personality, someone who's fun and easy to root for. And I mean, the D-backs are already viewed as being a pretty fun team. Patrick, I know you watched a lot of Diamondbacks baseball and some of those high moments and what that looked like in the playoffs. Randy Arozarena on the Diamondbacks would make them an even more fun team than they already are.
I already have a vision in my head of the shirt that's going to drop in the PHNX locker. It's just going to say the Desert Rose. Like that right there is going to move a lot of units. The Desert Rose, Randy Arozarena. I mean, that's perfect. That's it right there. Yeah, he fits in with this clubhouse, I think, in a big way. So when you look at it from that perspective, you might have to make that work. And that $20 million figure too, Eugenio Suarez, you just got him for that. That's about half your money right there potentially. So if you are able to go all in and get a Arozarena, maybe they can throw in somebody on the back end, like a reliever, because they grow on trees down in St. Petersburg. So there's no issues with that. They could sweeten the deal. And I think the Diamondbacks would definitely be starting off the offseason. Even if they did little else after that, they will definitely have won the offseason so far in the NL West.
Yeah, there is some trade history between the Diamondbacks and the Rays. It's not quite to the extent of the Diamondbacks and the Mariners, who have made at this point 3 trades like in the last calendar year, which is pretty funny. But yeah, I mean, the D-backs traded, pretty minor move. D-backs traded David Peralta to Tampa Bay at the trade deadline in 2022. The D-backs got Jordan Luplow from the Rays in the 2021 offseason leading into the 2022 season. And there was a pretty big trade back leading into the 2018 season. Steven Souza Jr. coming over to the D-backs, Brandon Drury, big 3-way deal there involving the Yankees. So, yeah, there is some trade history here between these two teams. And, I mean, seems like, I guess the big takeaway is, like, the cost is pretty big. Like, you are probably going to pay a Randy Arozarena almost $20 million in his last year of arbitration, which I'm sure is a factor here for the D-backs. But yeah, I mean, if you're able to find a way to make it work, and I know trading Geraldo Perdomo, if that's what it took, you'd have to find a way to replace him most likely. I don't know if the D-backs would want to go into opening day with Jordan Lawler, like having to be the opening day shortstop. There would need to be another solution there as well. So it's complicated. I think it's difficult on paper. It's a bit of a stretch for the D-backs, but I wouldn't rule it out entirely. If there's a way to, as you said, maybe the Rays throw in some other pieces to help the D-backs in other areas, that would certainly make this deal more possible. But it's certainly something that we'll be monitoring here moving forward. In the meantime, you all should become PHNX diehard if you have not already. It is one of the greatest things in Valley sports. At least we like to view it that way. You get 20% off of everything at the PHNX locker, as well as off all of our events here at PHNX, all of the takeovers during the season, all of that stuff. You also get all of the writing over on our website. We have plenty of stuff available for free, but we do put our best stuff behind the paywall from time to time. I have a written mailbag story coming out later today that is for diehards only. You can ask me questions directly. And it's a little different than Mailbag Monday. It gives me a little bit more time to research and really think and check with people and whatnot on different things. So that's something I do every month here. That's for diehards only. So if you haven't become a diehard already, be sure to go over to gophnx.com and do that as soon as possible. I love bread, Patrick. I don't know about you. And one of the best ways to get your bread is from our friends over at Hero Bread. Hero makes sliced breads, buns, and tortillas that are available on hero.co and on Amazon as well. What makes them better than any other competitor you've used before? Well, it's that it's fantastic. And the fact is that Hero Bread is like actually somewhat good for you, which I know I have a problem, Patrick, where sometimes I eat a lot of like white bread, which I know is not good for me. But Hero Bread is loaded with high fiber, ultra low net carbs, and 0 grams per sugar as well. So it's actually good for you, which is one of our favorite things, and it's delicious as well. Right now, Hero Bread is offering listeners 10% off their first order. Just go to hero.co and use code PHNX to save on Hero Bread today. That's HERO.co to save 10% off. And when you're purchasing your bread, you should also go over to the BetMGM Sportsbook app and place a couple of bets over there. You can place your first BetMGM Sportsbook wager through the BetMGM Sportsbook mobile application of at least $10. You'll receive $200 instantly in additional winnings, regardless of your wager's outcome. It's a pretty fantastic deal. Just go over, download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android, or visit betmgm.com and sign up with code PHNX. You can sign up and deposit at least $10 into your newly created account. Place a wager in the amount of at least $10 at standard odds price. And then once you have placed a qualifying bet, you'll receive $200 in bonus bets, regardless of the outcome of your wager. So sign up for BetMGM. Use bonus code PHNX. Place your first BetMGM Sportsbook wager through the mobile application of at least $10. Once again, you'll receive $200 instantly in additional winnings, regardless of your wager's outcome. Check out the show notes for full details. And now listen to Shane talk about the disclaimer.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus to wager. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., New York, or Ontario.
Ontario. There we go. We're almost. There's a little delay. Just a little delay. Otherwise, we would have been perfectly in sync. Yes, Elizabeth Bread and betting to win more bread, breaking bread while betting. Fantastic. It's just, I mean, what else would you want to do on a Friday afternoon? I believe we got a super chat earlier that I missed. Want to touch on that real quick. Corbin Barrels on the Randy Arozarena talk says the answer is yes, whatever it takes. And I think a lot of fans feel that way. Like, I think fans are probably willing to stretch more for Randy Arozarena than they are for maybe some other players, just because Randy Arozarena is Randy Arozarena. Again, it's about the vibes. It's not just about the player, as I said earlier. But speaking of the vibes, Patrick, the vibes around Shohei Ohtani are very mysterious. And would we really have expected it to go any other way at this point, right? We heard earlier, I think it was Jeff Passan, who reported at one point that teams who leaked any information were having that held against them in contract negotiations with Ohtani. Ohtani in general is just sort of a mysterious fellow who doesn't doesn't necessarily, say a whole lot to the media. There isn't usually a whole lot of information out there, but we did actually get some information today. In Jeff Passan's story over at ESPN, he reported that the Texas Rangers, Boston Red Sox, and New York Mets have moved on from the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. And the teams that are still in the bidding include the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Angels, and the Toronto Blue Jays. He also mentioned the San Francisco Giants as a team that is known or has had interest. They sort of think that there might be interest there, although it's not totally clear exactly where they stand at this point. I've been wanting to talk about Ohtani for a while, not necessarily from a Diamondback standpoint, because let's face it, if the D-backs have $20 million to spend this winter, you're probably going to come a little bit short in the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. I don't really think that's going to happen. But Ohtani is, right, arguably the most talented player that this sport has ever seen. He doesn't necessarily have the longevity in his career at this stage, but in terms of pure talent and just ability of what he can do on the baseball field, it's truly unprecedented. And because of that, he's one of the most intriguing free agents that we've ever had in this sport. Patrick, what are your thoughts on kind of the early takeaways here from Shohei Ohtani and this news that we got today from Jeff Passan and where his market stands?
I'm a little disappointed this hasn't become more of a circus than it typically is when you have a mega free agent like this. We can all recall last year, Aaron Judge, being in some hotel in San Francisco and that news leaking out. And of course, how much is that obviously orchestrated by his agency to squeeze a little more money out of the Yankees? Yeah, that worked. But that's also fun. Like that's fun, part of the business of this game, the entertainment factor. So that's been my only disappointment. But yeah, teams have definitely been on the hush hush, and such to the point where reporters are on the hush hush. In fact, you haven't even reported the lunch that you had with him and Mike Hazen last week, right? Have you talked about that on the show yet?
Patrick, we're not supposed to say that. Patrick, you just single-handedly took the Diamondbacks out of the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. Look at what you've done.
Oh, well, I guess I'll have to come and play for the Colorado Rockies then. No, it's been really interesting. I think originally they had wanted to get the deal done before the winter meetings. Now they're hoping, possibly it'll get finalized before the end of the winter meetings next week. So we still have a few days to go with this. I wouldn't be surprised if it maybe drags on even longer potentially, because we've already I think we're going to miss the first deadline that was set. Because again, I don't know how you have these kind of secret clandestine meetings with one of the biggest superstar athletes in all of the world. How do you make that happen? Are they just doing Zoom phone calls? Don't you want to show off your city, the best of it and all those things? Then again, one of the things that's on his list of demands, if you will, is, he would like to play with another Japanese player. And if you look at the list of teams that are still reportedly in the hunt, it's really just the Blue Jays and the Cubs. Blue Jays having Yusei Kikuchi and the Cubs having Seiya Suzuki. That being said, I said this yesterday with my buddy Kevin Henry on the DNVR Rockies podcast. I sort of thought a strange dark horse, only because they continue to lose out the last few off seasons, it seems like, that the Giants will not only sign Ohtani, they don't have any Japanese players yet, but they could also sign Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Now that would be huge. Now we're talking, $700+ million to sign those two guys, which seems absolutely unheard of until you realize, hey, well, 2 years ago, the Texas Rangers spent $500 million for their double play duo. So, to fortify a starting rotation that the Giants, desperately need right now, you definitely would be doing that if you sign both Shohei Ohtani, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. We know Japanese players will flourish in the Bay Area, and there you go. Ohtani's got his buddy from Japan right there on the same roster.
So we've got these teams that are still in the mix, right? I don't know if I fully believe that it is going to be one of these teams. It still feels like maybe things could change. Maybe there are other teams that are in the mix here, but certainly when Jeff Passan reports things, tend to be true more often than not. So if it is, Patrick, if it is in fact the Dodgers, the Cubs, the Angels, the Blue Jays, we'll throw the Giants in there. Maybe they are in the bidding as well. If you've got to make your prediction today, where is Shohei Ohtani going?
I think he'll go to the Giants. I do. I think he'll go to the Giants. It seems like in the last year plus, the Dodgers are the obvious choice. Except over the years, man, all those players that are obvious, choices or their destination seems so very clear. It doesn't
Yeah,
happen. Bryce Harper, you're like, well, we know he's going to the Yankees.
right.
That didn't happen, right? In fact, they I'm not gonna say they shot themselves in the foot, but they're like, we're gonna get Giancarlo Stanton right now. We're not even gonna wait for Harper to become a free agent. So the Dodgers seem like that the odds-on favorite to get that done, but with their financial issues that they're having, and trying to stay underneath the soft cap that's there, I could see them going and getting multiple players for the same price that you would pay just for one Shohei Ohtani. That's kind of why I think the Giants have the most room as far as their payroll is concerned to fit in an Ohtani. The Blue Jays, okay, that fits, but you've got Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr. for only 2 more years.
Yeah.
So, all right, I mean, you're going to have Ohtani beyond that, and that's great and all, but if Ohtani wants to win a championship, he's only going to have 2 bites at the apple the next 2 years with Toronto. I think Chicago gives him an opportunity to win a lot longer. Their rotation is fairly young with, led by Justin Steele. You have Javier Assad and Jordan Wicks just coming up this past year. So they have a young roster. I mean, the Dodgers do have a young rotation, very unproven. So I think all of those are good destinations for him. But I just sort of think that the Giants make sense based on the fact that they are desperate enough to pay the
Yeah.
top dollar. It is a great location for him to fit in. It keeps him, very much on the West Coast, and the Giants very easily, if Yoshinobu Yamamoto does become a guy that gets $200 million or close to that as a starting pitcher, you could go maybe a more cheaper route in a Shoto Imanaga and Nioti Uesawa, I want to say is his name, former teammate of his in the Nippon Ham Fighters back in 2017. So he's a guy that's just been posted who had arguably better pitching numbers than Ohtani when they played together in 2017. So, there are some options where you can have, I'm not going to say 2 for the price of 1 because that 1 is very expensive in Shohei Ohtani. But if you don't have a Japanese player right now, and that's super important for Ohtani to be alongside, there are several that are available right now in free agency.
The Giants are just such a broken brand right now. They're like a kind of broken team. They're not terrible, right? I mean, they were respectable this last year, but just from a brand standpoint, like it's been kind of a long time since Giants fans have really had a star player to rally around. And I mean, they've gotten so close, right? At least we think, to landing a number of big star level players over the last few years. Of course, there was the Arson Judge situation last year. There was the Carlos Correa situation as well. I think they were in on Bryce Harper to some extent. Pretty much all these big superstar players the Giants have tried, and they've just failed time and time again. But yeah, I mean, this does make some sense with, the Giants are on the West Coast. If that's something that's important to Ohtani, that certainly would make sense. And, I don't think D-backs fans would be too happy with Shohei Ohtani in San Francisco, but they'd be a whole lot happier than with Shohei Ohtani in Los Angeles. That I think everyone could probably agree on that. I'm with you where that almost feels like too easy. Him going to the Dodgers, it's like, no, like that's too obvious. Like Shohei Ohtani is so much more mysterious and interesting to just like sign with the team that everyone's sort of been suspecting for months at this point. If I have to make a prediction today, I think the Giants is a good one. I'd be pretty tempted to just say that as well. I'll throw the Cubs out there as a team that, I think this could happen for them. It seems like they've been very much in the mix, trying to make this happen from the beginning. Another team that, could use a star level player to really build around and build a brand around. Cubs baseball hasn't necessarily lived up to, what I know fans out there would really hope for ever since the 2016 World Series run. Ohtani would very much, repair whatever has gone wrong with the Cubs brand here over the last few years. But yeah, there's just so much mystery when it's all said and done with Ohtani, and it's going to be fascinating. If he signs at the winter meetings, Patrick, it's going to be mayhem. Like I'm just picturing like reporters like running around the like press work area and things just being utterly chaotic. But if I had to ask you a slightly different question, instead of where do you think Ohtani will go, from just like a storyline perspective, if you could just send him anywhere, where would you want Ohtani to go. Not from, I mean, I know we don't have like a rooting interest in this, but it would just be like fun. Like, yeah, put Ohtani on that team. It's going to be like, that's going to be fun.
The Savannah Bananas. Okay, so you didn't specify Major League Baseball. I'm going to say Savannah Bananas. No,
fair enough.
That would be, that's curious. Yeah, if you're just straight up fantasy booking, where he goes for a good story. I in talking about the Dodgers and like, oh, that doesn't seem like it should happen because that's the obvious choice. I think it won't happen in LA for the Dodgers because everything we know about Ohtani says like he's just this angel. I wonder if that like weighs on him at all. Like I got to do everything right. Also it becomes easier to do everything right when you just do everything right. And you're just, if you are really that pure. Right. And so I'm curious how much he would think to himself, if I go to the Dodgers, that's, my stabbing Angels fans in the back, like that could be really painful. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe that's the one place that I don't go. I would like to see him in a way in San Francisco. Selfishly, I know a lot of Diamondbacks fans on paper, you'd say, oh, you don't want the Giants to start to get, really good again and have a superstar player on the roster. On the other hand, you would see him twice a year. Ken Kendrick, now all of a sudden, does he have an extra $5 million in the hopper because of the additional revenue that comes in from a packed house of people descending upon Phoenix like they were for the entire month of October in the postseason? Now maybe that changes your financials in a big way if he can, come to the NL West. So, fantasy booking wise, I kind of would like to also see him in San Francisco. I think that would be a good fit for the Giants and a good fit for Major League Baseball as well.
I just don't know if he goes to San Francisco. Like, are the Giants a good baseball team? I still think they're kind of meh, right? I mean, they maybe be like on the like the fringes of the playoff picture. I can maybe predict them to, at least nab a wild card spot if they had Ohtani. I don't think they're up there with the Dodgers, right? I mean, if you add Ohtani to the Giants roster, the Dodgers are still probably far and away projected to win the NL West.
Let's take the A's, Royals, and Rockies out of the conversation, the three worst teams this past year. But you put him on a roster like the Pirates. You're not saying all of a sudden, oh my gosh, they're going to have a deep run in the postseason. Yeah. But they do become a contender, especially given that division. And just everyone on the roster all of a sudden looks a little bit different. Ohtani came into the Angels. That wasn't his team. That wasn't his organization, right? It was Mike Trout's team. And so, he's kind of learning the ways of MLB and America and whatnot. And now where he goes, for his next team, assuming he doesn't go back to Anaheim to be with the Angels, now all of a sudden things start to change. And do we see him in that leadership role of players maybe following him a little bit more? And now he's the guy and it's not Mike Trout. And then all of a sudden, hey, there's Anthony Rendon kind of in the picture as well. It becomes Shohei Ohtani's team. And immediately everybody becomes a little bit better. So he's worth a lot more than just himself. And so I think he's going to bring that to his next team. The Angels are one of those clubs and you say, hey, the Angels are going to angel, right? They can't, almost like they can't get out of their own way. They can't figure it out. I think Ohtani with just about any other team in baseball, it gives that club a little bit of extra oomph, a little bit extra moxie and maybe pushes them over the hill and builds a little bit more momentum than what we've seen in Anaheim with Ohtani, Rendon, and Mike Trout together.
It's certainly, I mean, he's worth more than just Ohtani, the baseball player. There's just such a brand building component to this. There's tons of money from like Japanese advertisers that you'd probably expect. So, part of that contract is certainly going to pay for itself. I think Jeff Passan wrote today that north of 500 million seems to be foregone conclusion at this point. 550, I think he mentioned, is maybe something like what it would take. We'll see what happens there. Some people mentioned the Mariners as a team. It'd be fun to see him land there. I could totally see that. That's probably the first team that comes to mind for me is like, yes, the storyline here would be great. It's a really hungry fan base. It's a faithful fan base that, I think has had a hard time with some of the words that have come out of certain front office executives' mouths over there. I wasn't going to say his name, but Jerry DeVotto. And yeah, I mean, just what he would mean to that city and, you know, the Shohei Ohtani brand, I think would really thrive in Seattle. I mean, it would thrive anywhere, but I think it would really thrive in Seattle. The Diamondbacks, Bees is right. If the Diamondbacks got Shohei, I mean, yeah, that would be, from a story perspective, that would be incredible. And I do want to point out that not that long ago, there was an actual report about Shohei Ohtani coming to the Diamondbacks. No, this was not 2 weeks ago. This was in July at the trade deadline when John Morosi posted this tweet. He said, Orioles D-backs among teams inquiring with the Angels about Shohei Ohtani's trade availability. Both clubs' interest has been described as due diligence. Both teams have the young talent base conducive to making a trade. This was sort of fun for us on the show at the time because it gave us like, oh my gosh, we can at least talk about this and have it not be a totally pie in the sky kind of theory. Certainly didn't expect it to happen then. But in retrospect, Patrick, I mean, you were here for the D-backs postseason run. If the Diamondbacks had traded even something outrageous for Shohei Ohtani, and granted, he wasn't going to pitch with how things turned out. It wasn't the case at that time, but you know, he has this injury, and I guess he would not have been able to pitch for the Diamondbacks down the stretch. But even if you put Shohei Ohtani in the middle of this lineup in the postseason, did the Diamondbacks win the World Series and like not regret whatever they had to give up to get him? I think it's a pretty reasonable conversation.
No. My hot take, Diamondbacks don't make the playoffs with Shohei Ohtani last year. Honestly,
how?
A trade like that is going to be very distracting. And if we know one thing about the Diamondbacks run, Torey Lovullo, despite all the distractions of being in the postseason, he was the mastermind. He was able to navigate the ship of all these young guys, keep them within themselves, not trying to do too much. And you bring the circus that Shohei Ohtani is going to bring with him. And I don't say that in any disparaging way, just it would be absolute madness. It would have taken a while to kind of calm some things down. And then by that point, maybe you don't even get into the postseason. So if you're just adding a guy in October, if you can make trades then and just put him in the middle of your lineup, sure, great. But if we're talking about those final 2 months of the season, we know they barely got in the first place. I would actually argue that with how it played out, and Torey Lovullo keeping it into this community, this dangerous family, this connected team, it's going to be hard to be connected to a guy who's this superstar that you know is going to go out in free agency. You're probably not going to sign and stick around. I would argue that it would have been too much of a distraction for the Diamondbacks, knowing what we know and how it all ended up playing out.
What an insane take.
What's up, David?
All of the goodwill that you've built with fans of the PHNX D-backs podcast, Patrick, out the window. All of it out the window just now. I mean, I guess you don't know unless it actually happens. I'm find myself a little bit skeptical that adding Shohei Ohtani makes the Diamondbacks worse, which is not exactly what you're saying, but it's like sort of what you're saying. So yeah, interesting take there. But I did want to point out that not that long ago we were talking about this being a potentially real thing. But yeah, any hopes of the Diamondbacks being involved in this conversation, unfortunately, I don't think there's any substance to that whatsoever. There's just not going to be enough resources there.
Here's my question to you. If the Diamondbacks have $20 million to spend, how much of a season does that get you from Shohei Ohtani? 2 months? April and May? Would you pay $20 million to say, all right, Ohtani's going to be on the team until May 31st?
Can you do that?
Right?
Can the D-backs just be like, all right, we're going to sign Shohei Ohtani to a 2-month, $25 million contract? Yeah, there we go. There you go.
I mean, that's the equivalent, right? Because obviously you've got to, if you're paying $500 plus million,
prorate it. Yeah,
you're saving money annually. So if you're going, how much do we have to pay for just 2 months? We're trying to pack the ballpark in April and May. Yeah, $25 million.
Yeah, we'll have to get Ohtani's agent in on this. The best way to capitalize on Ohtani's value is, don't sign a long-term deal. Don't sign like a several-year deal with some opt-outs or whatever kind of nonsense. Just go month to month. What will you pay for Ohtani in April? All right, so this team's in for this much. All right, now we're going to sell May. What are people willing to offer for May? Yeah, I don't think it's exactly how it works, but yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, all of a sudden that $299 package for season tickets becomes $2,000. Hey, no, we can afford them now. Like, okay.
Well, based on being able to afford things, we have we love our friends over at Arizona Lottery, and we get to do 3 of these every week. These little scratchers, and so I get to do one today. I'm about to win some money, Patrick. I can just feel it. So you can maybe entertain the people, or I can just sort of talk as I'm scratching this and trying to figure out if I actually won anything.
Well, we
And
split.
we'll see
We
what
split
happens.
whatever you get. Obviously, I'm bringing you a lot of luck. St. Patrick, if I'm closing this out like St. Paul, as we know, the patron saint of the 9th inning, as he was throughout the entire postseason. Anything you win, I do expect to get a little bit of cut, bringing my Irish good luck to the table here.
Well, things aren't looking so good right now. I'm not gonna lie. All right, so I'm looking.
Is there any chance
for
that you
little-
could win enough on the scratch off that you single-handedly could afford Shohei Ohtani?
What's the highest it goes, Damon? 500K?
Yeah, I'm on these particular scratchers. I'm not so sure that
Okay.
we're gonna
Wow.
get
All
anywhere.
All right, maybe not
close.
these ones, the bigger ones, right? The bigger ones that we do from time to
We
time.
can't
Those are
even
perfect
pay
stopping.
Jesse's salary.
Yeah, I guess that's And unfortunately, $1 billion, $500 million. I don't know if that's quite on the table. But it looks like I swung and missed here, Patrick. Yeah.
So do you get a week of Shohei Ohtani for $500,000? No, I don't think that math works out. I think he
No.
just is in your lineup for opening day, $500,000 on opening day with the
No,
Arizona Lottery.
I think it's like the first 4 innings of opening day, and then he's got to go. That's all you could pay for the 500,000.
Who says no? Who says no to that deal?
Anyway, we love our friends at Arizona Lottery. We did win some money earlier this week with our lovely holiday scratchers, and it is a fantastic way. You're looking for stocking stuffers this time of year. Some of you get ahead on these things. I, as is well documented on this show, do not love to wait to the last minute. Probably pick up some of these Arizona Lottery scratchers because they are phenomenal and a great, easy thing to buy that could turn into up to $500,000 depending on which one you get. So go out and buy your holiday scratchers today. One of the best gifts that you can get for people in your life. And with whatever money you do wind up getting, you can go over to our friends at Game Time. And it's not only sporting events, it's also concerts, whatever shenanigans, whatever kind of events in town you're looking to attend. Game Time is the best ticketing app. There's a very personal experience. It's the most aesthetically pleasing ticketing app out there, which we've talked about a lot on this show. And it is the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So Patrick, we've got this thing called the Winter Meetings happening next week, and I will be there, and I know you will also be there. What do we expect? We think there's going to be some chaos? We think there's going to be some fun stuff? I know the Winter Meetings a number of years ago had a reputation as like there's going to be some stuff that goes down here. Less so in recent years. The Diamondbacks, I think, under Mike Hazen, the Diamondbacks have only signed Fernando Rodney during the Winter Meetings. That's the only major transaction that has happened during the meetings, actually. But you never know. I think Passan in his story had a Juan Soto deal maybe coming together by the end of the meetings. That would certainly be a big deal if that happened. What are your expectations for next week?
Yeah, I think we do get a Juan Soto trade, especially because he's a Scott Boras client, as is Randy Arozarena. So we talked earlier about, maybe an extension. That probably isn't going to happen since he does work alongside the Boras Corporation. But I think with Boras, he made his big spiel over there at the GM meeting. So when's he going to get a chance to talk with more reporters and stand up there, with his little Boras Corporation backdrop and his 3/4 zip? Like you need a Juan Soto trade to go down. And I think it makes sense for the Padres to, try to get something for him, considering that, he should make about $33 million in arbitration. So I think that's definitely going to happen. I think there's going to be a lot of other trades. And again, once Ohtani starts moving, immediately we're going to see Cody Bellinger find a home. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who really could sign, the biggest contract of any free agent starting pitcher other than
Yeah.
Ohtani. I think there's a good possibility of that happening. So I think we might, we're supposed to see more trades this offseason, I think, than any other, because of how light the free agent class is. Like after Ohtani, I mean, you're saying Cody Bellinger is the best guy. I mean, this is a player that the Dodgers, non-tendered around this time last year because he was making $17 million. Oh my gosh, that's so much money for a team like the Dodgers, right? So I think that's where it becomes interesting with all these guys that are going to be dangled out there in trades. Cleveland's got Shane Bieber out there, as well as now Emmanuel Clase as a great, at 25 years old, super affordable. I want to say his average annual salary is $4 million. So any team that's looking to save money right there because of his contract of what it is, the tax, it's very friendly because he's only making $4 million as far as the luxury tax is concerned. He's out there. There's going to be other names that go around. So I think we're going to see, probably more big trades than we do, big free agents, or maybe it'll be 1-for-1, right? Because usually you think there's probably a 4-to-1 ratio. I think it might be closer to 2-to-1 for every two big free agents that find a landing spot. We're going to have a pretty significant trade here at the winter meetings down in Nashville.
I totally agree. Yeah, it seems like even though the free agent market is not particularly great this year, I mean, there are still some bigger name free agent starting pitchers who haven't signed. Blake Snell's still out there, Yamamoto, Jordan Montgomery. So I don't know if next week is going to be all that crazy, but I do think that December as a whole is going to be pretty crazy. As you said, there's a lot of like bigger name guys rumored in trades right now. Definitely, I feel like more than we're used to seeing. A lot of like pretty darn good players who could be on the move in trades, and the Diamondbacks certainly expect to be engaged in a good part of the trade market, especially given some of the prices we've seen for free agent starters. That might be the route that they have to go to meet maybe their starting pitching need. Maybe it's Arozarena and they get their outfielder there as well. I expect them to be pretty active in that regard. I think if nothing else, the winter meetings just gives clarity on, just more information on what kind of conversations are being had. With the Diamondbacks, I'm especially curious what their degree of willingness is to deal a Drew Jones or a Tommy Troy or even a Jordan Lawler, although I don't really expect that. That's a really big variable for the Diamondbacks in terms of who they can bring back in a trade. This farm system is still decent. It doesn't have the reputation that it had a couple years ago when Corbin Carroll was still in it and Alec Thomas was still in it. But it's still a decent farm system, but it's top heavy. And so if you're not willing to part with a few of those guys at the top, it's going to be hard to get a Dylan Cease or a Corbin Burns, or even a Randy Arozarena potentially, unless the D-backs are willing to part with some of those top guys. So, hopefully we get a little bit more clarity on what the Diamondbacks are able to do there. And Patrick, while you're here, I mean, you cover the Rockies on a day-to-day basis. They're, our friends here in the NL West. The one team that Diamondbacks fans, I don't think particularly hate at this point. What do you expect from the Rockies as they look to kind of get things moving in the right direction?
I think the Rockies will do more than they did last year, where they acquired a AAA starting pitcher for depth in Jeff Criswell, and he never even debuted. So they basically just offloaded a relief pitcher in Chad Smith that they didn't see much of a future in. So I think they're going to have to do a lot more than they did all last offseason. I mean, while they did acquire Nolan Jones in November, he wasn't the Nolan Jones that he ended up becoming in 2023. He was a prospect that needed to prove himself. So it was, okay, maybe this guy is something, but otherwise they did nothing almost all of last offseason until you got to March. Everyone started getting hurt, and they said, let's get Mike Moustakas on a veteran deal, and Brad Hand and Jurickson Profar. I think they'll do a lot more than that, especially if they want to try to avoid losing 100 games again this year, which I think is very much a possibility, considering that all the issues that they have with the starting pitching, they're going to have again. Sure, Marquez might be back before the All-Star break, Senzatella at some point after, but those are guys coming back from Tommy John surgery. How much can you really rely on them and count on them to be themselves? They really won't be Marquez and Senzatella until 2025. So you do need to bolster that starting rotation a little bit more than you have already. They did acquire Cal Quantrill. That was a nice pickup I think he'll be a little bit better than just an innings eater, but they still need at least one more starting pitcher for the rotation. They've got a lot of prospects in the outfield too right now, and so that's something that they could trade from. It seems strange to trade a prospect outfielder when you just lost 100 games, but if you look at what their roster is like right now, they just don't have room to really develop all those guys. So you take some of that depth, right? And maybe you can go out and acquire someone. Eleuteris Montero kind of doesn't have a spot right now on the roster. So I think we're going to see a little bit more significant of a trade than we did at the winter meetings last year.
Well, I'm excited for it. Last year, I mean, I know I said that you don't necessarily get a ton of action. The D-backs didn't do anything at the meetings last year. There were some pretty big rumors that came out. Sean Murphy was rumored as a trade target for the D-backs at the time. We also saw Xander Bogaerts rumored as a potential free agent target for the D-backs during the winter meeting. So it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to being out there. And I didn't get nearly enough Patrick Lyons in my life in the month of October. So we're gonna make up for that here in December with the winter meetings next week.
Are we scheduled to go boot shopping, or are we getting like 10-gallon hats? Like which one did we want to do while we're down in Nashville?
I'm gonna eat some barbecue, Patrick. That's what I know. I'm gonna eat some barbecue. I'm staying a little bit after the meetings too. I'm gonna try to find like some local Nashville music, something authentic. See what we're able to pull off. But yeah, it should be fun. I mean, it's a really cool event to be a part of, with the entire baseball world just descending upon one hotel. I have heard that this particular hotel is especially difficult to navigate, and people like front office people can like hide in all of these various corners and whatnot. So it'll be interesting dealing with all that. But our friends over at CHGO will have a set on site at the winter meetings, which is really cool. I believe I will be joining our show from that set. So for those of you who were part of our winter meetings coverage last year, you know that I joined on very poor Wi-Fi and you could barely tell who I was. So hopefully the quality should be better this time around. Stay tuned for information on our show next week. Things might be a little bit different, just so you all know in advance. We might not be live at 1 p.m. every day. It's going to kind of depend on what Mike Hazen and Torey Lovello's availability looks like on our end. And just making sure that we're able to go live right after those events take place and give you the latest from the winter meetings. So excited for that. And we'll see what happens, Patrick. Maybe it's crazy. Maybe nothing really happens and we're all disappointed.
No, I hope not. That's a major undersell right there. You're lucky because Torey Lovello gets things started off. He'll be one of the first managers to talk Monday at 2:00 Central Time.
Okay.
So it'll be 1:00 here. So yes, you will definitely not be a part of a 1:00 show.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Patrick is scheduling all of our shows next week. He's taking on the task of arranging all that for us. He's basically a PHNX employee at this point. We've already established that. So it's just par for the course. Anyway, I'm certainly expecting it to be sunny next week, Patrick, which is a little surprising, but checking the weather, there's going to be a lot of sun. So I will certainly be bringing my Shady Rays with me over to Nashville. Shady Rays gear built to last. They are durable. And as Derek has talked about a lot on the show, they have a pretty crazy policy where if you break them or lose them, they will send you another pair completely for free. Really a great deal, and they are genuinely the best sunglasses that I have ever had. I grew up basically never wearing sunglasses and just letting the Phoenix sun just like destroy my eyes, and I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going to let the Nashville sun do that to me either. Shady Rays is currently in their biggest sale of the year for Black Friday. Don't miss out on the best deals for shades, snow goggles, and prescription sunglasses. Go to shadyrays.com and try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. Also want to give a shout out to our friends over at OGs. Of course, this is Flavoring Fridays presented by OGs. It's really nothing better, Patrick. Derek has talked about this at length on this show. It's nothing better than sitting on the couch watching your team with a bag of OGs gummies in your hand. It is the true excellent sports fan experience. Can't go wrong there. With a variety of bold flavors, OG's gummies are a slam dunk for your taste buds. Plus, you can customize your experience based on desired effect and strength. To learn more about OG's gummies and where you can find them, head on over to ogsbrands.com. Well, Patrick,
Tastes great, feels even better. OG's.
There you go. Well said. Well, Patrick, this has been fun. Having you make your triumphant return to the show. We've missed you around here. We still have not fully come to terms with the fact that you left us. So we're getting over it. But this was a lot of fun. Appreciate everyone being here and joining us here on this Friday edition of the PHNX D-Back Show. You can follow me on Twitter at Jesse N. Friedman. You can follow Patrick at Patrick D. Lyons. Damon, our producer, is on Twitter at Damon Dog. We are Damon's dogs.
Woof,
bark,
woof.
bark. Woof, woof. Yes.
I just need to
Damon's
say
dogs.
real quick that I miss Patrick, but don't tell him that, Jesse.
Okay. All right. I'll make sure he doesn't
Keep that
hear
a secret.
Yeah, I'll try to keep that a secret as best I can. We'll see what we can do.
You stole my heart. I miss you too, Damon.
And of course, also be sure to follow us on Twitter at PHNX_DBacks. I guess I should say X. Follow us on X at PHNX_DBacks. And of course, all roads lead to at PHNX_sports. That's on Twitter or X, Instagram, and Facebook as well. Thank you all again so much for being here. And remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it's so much more fun when Randy Arozarena is on your team.
We all silly like the mayor.